and thank you, Tom. So we're very glad to welcome this afternoon Annick Rivens, who is professor of the universities in Lille. And she's going to tell us with her colleagues who participate in the project about the Dial for You project concerning digital pedagogy to develop Autonomy, Mediate, and Certify Lifewide and lifelong language learning for European universities. So Annick, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Anne. I'm going to share. Is that okay, my slide?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. So thanks, CercleS, for inviting us to present the project. It's a good opportunity for us to share and hopefully to discuss the content. It's a very special day for us too, because yesterday was the day we had to hand on the midterm report. So everyone was up at midnight to do that, 1 minute before midnight. This is why we may look so tired today, but it's done. And today we are celebrating the first year of the project. Exactly. It was launched 1 year ago, so it's a very special day. So thanks for inviting us for our birthday. The project was an answer to a call which was entitled Cooperation for Innovation and the Exchange of Good Practice, Partnership for Digital Education Readiness. And we answered that 1 year ago. I mean, we started 1 year ago. I'm not going to read the title again. And the COVID situation was at the origin of our reflection, because as we will see, our habits have changed or still changing. So our consortium consists in 8 partner universities from all over Europe. Thanks for my partners for being here today. I can see a lot of them have managed to be here. Not all of them, because if I understood well, in Romania, it's a bank holiday today. So I don't know if in other countries it's the case, but not everyone was available. That I didn't know when I suggested 1st of June. So we have universities from France, Lille, Germany, Lithuania, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Spain, and Sweden, which provides a good variety of contexts. So this is interesting for our research, because we can apply and analyze the content in a variety of situations, politically speaking, pedagogically, linguistically, and culturally speaking as well. So as I was telling you, the background was that we, of course, as we have all seen and practiced, we wanted the background was the renewing of language learning and teaching in time of COVID-19. As we know, it was an unplanned shift to online content and a real push towards digital teaching and learning practices. We can see now that many opportunities that were sometimes dismissed by our colleagues are now really part of their teaching habits. But we also discovered, or we had to face the fact that there was a gap for digital technologies to fully support our new practice for good quality and inclusive education. How can we maintain interaction? And this was our first question. How can we take into account learners' new strategies? And you will see that our question also involves external practice, which could be called informal practice, language practice, because during the COVID crisis, we also discovered or observed the fact that learners were not satisfied with what they had online, what we universities sometimes gave them online, and they have used more and more language apps and developed language practice outside the classroom walls. Of course, this is not due to COVID situation, but we wanted to see in which amount of diversity it has affected their practice. So we have developed the project with 4 main goals. The first one was to facilitate mediation in all dimensions of the language learning process. So as I was telling you, taking into account both formal and informal situations. And we will see what I mean by taking into account. It's not just observing, it's also validating. And this is not an easy task. So we need to observe, analyze, and maybe find solutions to build capacity and autonomy. And won't be surprised that this is in the one key word in the title. And at CercleS, of course, the autonomy means a lot. So we are in this continuity as well. And develop the digital pedagogy of language educators, because we, of course, well, David Little is here today, but there's no learner autonomy if there's no teacher autonomy. And this is something that we have also observed. So we need to also help or guide, accompany language educators as well. And the final step would be to facilitate the recognition and the validation of this knowledge. As I was telling you, how can we take into account what is going on inside and outside the walls of university? Not just, of course, it could be by a portfolio, which is a tool that has existed for several years, but we wanted something maybe more updated and maybe easier, or that could really make a shift in at university level. Well, these are the keywords that we have developed, but I think it's important we started sharing data, designing tools in collaboration, and the idea is really to issue something concrete, something material, and disseminate at least among our partner universities. But maybe, and this is a chance that we have today at CercleS level. I haven't said at the beginning that the variety of countries that we have in the project, most of the countries also member, they belong to, we have national associations that belong to CercleS as well. So this is a good meeting point today that we can make also. If you have already taken part in such a project, you know that we have to produce intellectual outputs, the famous IOs that we are working on at the moment. And we developed, we went towards 4 main IOs, which is creating a database on both formal and informal digital pedagogy to facilitate language learning mediation. We also wanted to explore the possibility of virtual reality, gamification for inclusion, because what I didn't say is that the members of Die4U were originally part of another university project called InclusU. So inclusion is something that we really want to deal with. Of course, material to develop autonomy, because how can we take into account all aspects of language learning if we don't facilitate the learner autonomy so that he can recognize, use, and take advantage of all the facilities that exist in what we have called lifelong and lifewide learning. And finally, as I was telling you, the recognition and validation. And we have thought of badges and micro-credentials to do so. I will explain later on in more details. So our theoretical framework, briefly, because I want to leave the floor to my colleagues also to present their IOs, focuses on learner autonomy, metacognition, informal and formal language learning, badges, and micro-credential. So briefly, because I could say a lot about autonomy, what was at the core of our development is that autonomy is not something stable, it's not linear, and it undergoes periods of instability, variability, adaptability. So which means we have to take into account the fact that things are not stabilized, even less in this period. And how can we make learners take advantage of all the linguistic affordances in their environment, as Menendez de Oliveira says or has written? How can they reflect about their learning and use effective learning strategies? It affects their identity, how the person understands his or her relationship to the world, not just for language learning. Responsibility, how can we develop the capacity to assume the learning decisions that we or that the learners, generally speaking, make. Agentivity from Bandura, with the fact that the perception that our acts need to be controlled by ourselves. So we need to be agents of our learning process, and control, which is something that we often talk about also, which is the capacity to manage the self-directed learning situation, including emotions, as Peggy Candace and Anna Chateau, for example, have written a few years ago. So these are the main lines. Of course, this is not all, but this is what I would like to focus on today, is how can we deal with these aspects of language learning. It also relates to motivation, that Menezes de Oliveira also describes as a complex moving force that involves all these aspects: social, affective, cognitive factors, concerning attitudes, desire, expectation, so needs, value, efforts, and these are the main elements that I would like to mention today. And also, as we were saying at the beginning, with autonomy or with language learning, it varies. It's not stabilized. So this is why we need to guide this process, so that maybe there will be periods when we need to help go forward. This is also a way that we had visualized with Martinez and Weiss the situation of language learning. Well, I will try to summarize the picture. We have two triangles, one which is going towards enlarging the scope of choices, diversification, evolution, and inclusion of informal resources. But it goes along with, at the same time, the possibility, the ability that the learner has to be more precise, to know more about his language learning strategies, and to have more defined goals for language learning. So these two movements are evolving at the same time, and the idea of all the different arrows at the bottom of the slide means that we have no similar parcours or tracks. We have individual tracks, individual needs, different needs that we want to distinguish and leave different. We don't want to have a formalized, uniformized learner, but of course take into account all the different needs. But what is important here is that the two processes of enlarging the scope of resources and of possibilities goes along with the precision into the knowledge of each personal needs and goals. This is made possible, according to what we had observed in this study, metacognition, the reflection on the language learning process. To make sure we all talk about the same thing, formal, informal, non-formal, where we know that nowadays maybe we don't want to oppose formal and informal because it would be more like a continuity, but at least to make sure I would like to remind the Europa, for example, grid. We have 3 criteria to distinguish formal and informal learning, whether it is taken in charge by the institution, which is the case here. We, as you have seen, we want at the end that the institution recognizes the informal language learning, which may seem as something contradictory because we see that informal language learning is not taken in charge by the institution. But recognizing doesn't mean that we are taking in charge. So this is something that maybe we can discuss afterwards. Structured goals, how can we help, maybe as we saw in the previous slide, how can we help make things more structured, more explicit? And this goes along with the intentional learning process that can be a criterion to distinguish formal and informal language learning. I like the formulation of a tamer version of rewilding. Are we letting our learners be wild and wild yet tame? So we could, I like this opposition as well. Erstat mentions Lifewide, lifelong learning that we have used in the title, because I like the idea that it's diachronic and synchronic at the same time. And I saw that Nicolas Guichon, who is a speaker today at Calico conference, was now talking of learning 360 degrees. And I also like the idea of the looking everywhere to learn. So I added this, the title of the conference that I saw on the program. Well, gamification, I'm not going to go into many details, just rather a visual aid rather than a theoretical framework. This is just a visualization. What I liked was that it mentioned badges, avatars, and which is for me a way to move towards IIOs, our intellectual outputs, because this is what we will be working on, how to gamify, how to use maybe avatars and create badges. But we are not talking about, not only about badges, motivational badges, but also institutional badges. Gamification, when you look at the tools that we have today, we have some tools that could be considered useful for gamification, but we will see that we are experimenting other tools more maybe adapted to the needs we have defined. Badges, as you know, or maybe not, relies on the fact that it goes along with what we were saying about autonomous guided language learning. The basic step is that learning happens at every stage of the journey, if we can say so in the blue square. How can we recognize with open badges? But most of all, what do we put in the badges? Because if we want to make it adapted to language learning and the development of autonomy, what we have to do in our project is to define these badges. What can we recognize as useful or as valid for language learning? The idea, as you know, is then to make it visible through social networks, to make it visible in lifelong learning, throughout your career or your personal development. So the idea is, how can we keep a track of things that have been done during the learning process, but which doesn't necessarily appear on the diploma. Here at Lille, we have members, chairman of the European Blockchain Association, and we have tested diploma and a CLES certificate in the format of a badge, of a micro-credential. And using the blockchain technology, it's not a Bitcoin, but this is really a certificate, a diploma. Briefly, what is a micro-credential relying on blockchain technology? What is essential is that it provides a proof of authenticity. It's a link that is certified by the blockchain technology. It means the diploma will exist, whatever happens, materially speaking, it will be somewhere coded. It's easily retrievable via QR code. As you can see here, it's a CLES certificate that you can keep on your phone, for example, just keeping the QR code. It's plurilingual. You can, I haven't put the image here, but you can translate it in as many languages as you want to, as it has been planned, of course. You can use it via your smartphone, and you can share the link on social networks. So you can, what is important is that if you want to be employed, you can show easily what is the CLES certificate. And if you click on it here, you will see the European framework of references, the different levels, the different competencies. So you can easily, the idea of the micro-credential is that you can easily provide a proof of your learning, what you have learned. So I'm going to move towards the development of our intellectual outputs. And starting with IO1, I don't think I have colleagues from IO1 here. I don't know if one would like to. I will leave the floor. Otherwise, I will continue, but these are the colleagues from UBB who are leading this intellectual output and where the bank holiday is today. So we have started with a questionnaire that I think maybe you have been, we have asked you if you could answer. I know it was difficult because at the same time, there were many questionnaires. CercleS itself had one going on. So this would be interesting now that we have the results, that we could maybe share and compare our results, because we haven't asked exactly the same questions on the effect of the COVID situation. And the idea of IO1 is to provide a database for language learning mediation, tools that would help the teachers to use, that they could use for language teaching. I'm going to go briefly through some results, not all of them, because we haven't treated all of them, and we are in the middle of the project, as I have told you. Well, one first element, which is not really a surprise, but there is a significant difference between the level of digital skills at the beginning of the pandemic and at the moment where the questionnaires were filled, which was in January and February this year. The lower level of digital skills seems to be correlated with age, with elder instructors, at least in our questionnaire. After approximately 2 years of using different apps, age still remained the main factor that determined the improvement of digital skills. This is one first element that we observed in the answers that we had. Another element, hold on, I have to do what Tom was saying, because I have something hiding my screen, and I see there are people in the waiting room. Don't know if it's still the case. Digital pedagogy. It seems that listening skills were favored by respondents. It's the skill that they like more, or that they think they could practice more online. As for gamification, I don't know if you can see, in what ways did digital game-based activity influence your teaching? Of course, the observation was that it had increased student participation. Well, I'm saying of course. I mean, it's not really a surprise, but it's good to see that it works. It was fun and entertaining. And not necessarily competitive, if we can see all the details. And it doesn't seem to have distracted learners from learning, which is, well, it's always good to check. Okay. Another question was about metacognitive strategies. How much do you encourage students to use metacognitive strategies for planning, self-monitoring, and self-evaluation? The more green and purple are a lot or to a great extent. So we can see that self-evaluation seems to be a common practice, but there's no very big difference among the three categories here. So, but it's not consistent. So maybe we think in the tools kits that we will be working on, it will be important to continue focusing on this aspect. Anxiety. A question was asked on communication-related anxiety during online teaching, and we can see that it provoked high level of anxiety on the teacher's part. And we are now treating the students' answers, and it seemed to be symmetrical. The question was asked to the teachers: which of the skills below have your student expressed more anxiety or concern about? Again, here, green and purple are the higher, or it means a lot or to a great extent. And we can see with that speaking, of course, was provoking a lot of anxiety online, and also writing, which is something maybe that was not so obvious, and we would need to see why. Is it because it becomes public, or we need to go into more details in these answers. So this is what the glossary will look like. We are not look like, but how we are starting to divide the program, I mean the development, providing, for example, a tool like Babel here. We will define, describe what the tool is, suggested use, provide screenshots, and classify so that the teachers can find at the same place all these tools gathered with the first global analysis. And I will continue here with some, for example, teaching sequences to provide guidelines for facilitated use of the resource. This is the UBB team. As they are not here, I have added their avatars, and this helps me move to the second I/O, and I will leave the floor to Teresa, who will present the I/Os she's co-leading with Viadrina. Teresa, maybe if you want me to, because I suppose I need to continue on clicking, so you can tell me if you want me to go ahead or not.
To click, I will. Thank you very much, Annick. So I'm here together with Dr. Andreas Bad from Viadrina, our colleagues on this I/O. I'm from Malmö University. Right, so the objectives of our I/O are the following, and it's from the application. That's why it's kind of lengthy and wordy. But to create a prototype of virtual learning environments for students to act in as avatars or otherwise, exploring the virtual reality environment's effect on students' VR interaction behavior during the COVID-19 pandemic, and also to create prototypes for online games addressing the pedagogical challenge in training oral interaction and pronunciation online. And well, when we talk, sorry, could you?
Sorry, maybe I went
not so quick. So when we talked about creating the VR environment, we had an idea that it would be maybe more a virtual environment than a virtual reality environment. We kind of had a discussion on that later on, but our idea was to have a virtual place where we could kind of, the teachers could meet, and also the students could meet and have I don't know, interactions of different kinds. I'll get to that. We had a change in that focus. So now, if you would, thank you. And then both of the objectives are intended to compensate for the loss of opportunities to interact with fellow students and teachers on campus due to the pandemic restrictions. And then we also plan that based on the prototypes and the VR learning environment and language learning games may be developed by commercial software or game development companies when the project ends. And the consortium will also then launch a public call for tenders. Please. Right, so in this IO, we have different competences. We have language teachers, of course, and researchers. And since the idea was that students from game development program would create these prototypes, we also have the computer science teachers and researchers, and also then added on interaction design teachers. Well, that might not be very different, but so we have a lot of different competences here. And one of the first steps was to choose what languages to engage in the IO. And the ones we chose were French, Russian, and Swedish as a second language, which was the languages that we ourselves deal with or teach or research. And we also discussed that maybe we could add on other languages along the way. So once we had done that, chosen the languages, we had the ideas of these languages, the challenges that we faced in these language teaching situations, presented and launched to a number of students who could then choose to try and solve those problems for us with games in game development program. And for the French games, Andreas will now explain what happened.
Yes, thank you very much, Teresa. So I could say that we at first identified language needs. I mean, we identified areas of communication and language learning which presented some difficulties, and we thought that gamification could be a good possibility to make learning easier and more funny in these areas. There were grammatical issues, there were idioms, there were cultural issues. We were thinking about interactive elements, and then we had to search for students who would work with us, who would program these games, because I mean the technical competencies are on the Swedish side. I mean we and in Viadrina we don't have these possibilities. And we were very lucky to have two students who were very engaged and very competent, and they took up our ideas. I mean, we met first. We told them. When I say we, it's my colleague Sylvie Bordeaux and myself. Sylvie couldn't come today. She broke a leg, unfortunately, and today she's in hospital for radiography. And so we identified these possibilities. We talked about the games, and then they had very cute, very good ideas about how to realize this game. The first one is called a train game. So we see it here. The problem is the double pronominalization, or it's difficult to pronounce. That means that any verb in French can have maximum two objects, a direct object and an indirect one. And if you replace these ones by pronouns, you have to put these pronouns in a certain order to create correct sentences. And this word order is not so easy, especially for German speaking, for German native speakers. And so here you have three tracks. I mean, it was not our idea. So these are my idea. We're very pleased that these represent the colors of France. You see the tricolor. There's a nice idea of our students, and we of course accepted this idea. I mean, you see there's packages, there's charges on the tracks, and you have to put them, to choose them correctly and to put them in the correct order on the train above. And if it's correct, the train will move in the other direction, so to the left side. There are some sound effects and kind of feedback, like very good, super, you're an expert, and something like that. And at the end, when the game is over, you get badges. I just thought about this when Annick, when you told about these creating badges, the design a leaderboard and so on and so forth. So this process, students realized exactly. So there are optical effects as well. The second game is a kind of roulette, color wheel. So it's about idioms. There are relationships between colors and nouns. You see here, roulette, you can click on tourner and it will turn around. And if you have rouge, you have to associate that to rouge de honte. You can be red with shame in English. So it's similar here in French, but it's not necessarily similar to German or to other languages. And it's the same principle. So at the end, you get points, extra points for rapidity, extra points for finding rules, and so on and so forth. And we are now in a phase where we hopefully could manage to get realized other games. We have to talk that over in our next meeting. Maybe we'll have other students in the next academic year who could maybe help us to develop other games of other types of the prototypes of games. So I think that's about right.
Yes, thank you. And that's one thing that has been really interesting to work with this particular project is that we are forced to work within a certain time frame, not only with our project, but also with the students, when the students are creating the game prototypes, and also the students then testing. So it's been, it has been both challenging, but also kind of making things move. So we really have no time to think. We have to get going immediately. And then we might, as you say, Andreas, and then we might, for the next year, we have another cohort doing the same thing, and then we have more experience, and maybe we could have those students doing something as well. So Russian language, that's also at Malmö. They wanted to, they decided to do some grammar games, and well, sorry. They first wanted to work with verbs of motion, but then they were limited by not having Russian teaching on that level for that term, for this term. So they had to choose to gamify exercises with accusative case involving questions. Right, and then yes, you could move on.
Show, yeah.
So this is a very early sketchy kind of image from what they were doing, and it's finalized. Well, this week is the examination week in Sweden. So next week everything will be done. All the prototypes are done. So, but here we can see that you're kind of supposed to pull the right form of the yellow fields or boxes to the white box up in the middle. Thank you. And then we have Swedish as a second language, where I was in myself, and we wanted to focus on pronunciation, because that's what students, not only during the COVID period, have expressed a need of, because you do need feedback for pronunciation practice, and that is very time consuming if you have, I don't know, 30 students and one teacher. So this would be a game that we were longing for even before this project. So sorry,
I just wanted to show you what it looked like.
Very trigger happy. Right. So we thought that this hearing and repeating and getting feedback would be a way to go. But then you would need some kind of sound recognition. And that's clearly the computer scientists said that was too advanced to use. So maybe we could do instead something to where the students can record and then listen to their recording themselves, to listen to the norm near pronunciation and then to their own pronunciation. And that would be a way then to go about it. And then you could also, of course, you could use all kinds of pronunciation difficulties or challenges in any language, but in this case in Swedish, like reduction or assimilation or accent or flow, etc. Right, and here is also a very early sketch where you could have minimal pairs with pronunciation of glass and glass, which is glass and ice cream in Swedish. And here we also have not only a pronunciation and listening exercise, but also to kind of identify the word. Right, thank you. Yes, we can move on. Then we had our fourth task, if you will, which was the virtual reality environment. And here we left the game development program and found two master students in interaction design who took on this task. And the initial idea with the library, etc., and kind of building to meet colleagues and other students, we left because the students had ideas on other environments, and also to kind of have more of either interacting with avatars, or a discussion came up on having interaction with other people with as a multi-user environment, as it is called. So they did research themselves with data collection, and they sent out a questionnaire where they found that students want some kind of competitive element or competition, some kind of game where you can gain something. And they also wanted a relaxed environment. So they came up with the idea to have something in a forest or in a picnic environment, which is here. And they also, thanks. And they also added on, what they did was they created prototypes where you could have some kind of game element with Pictionary or charades, which would be a multi-user environment with other persons, either people you know and have decided with, or perhaps with people you don't know and kind of who enter into the same environment without knowing who will be the one they're meeting. But also a single user picnic environment where you could learn different verbal phrases, for instance, to drink water, have coffee, throw a ball, etc., and then use these phrases in the Pictionary game environment. That's that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. Yeah, well, before we move on to IO3, what is important for us is that it starts from the learners' ideas for most of the games, and so that it's a pair work, I would say, teachers, of course, but also based on learners' ideas. So this is why some changes have occurred in the middle. We can move on to IO3. I don't know who wants to speak for IO3. Sylvia, Mercedes?
Mercedes, do you want? Okay.
I start to explain the IO3. We are in the Zoom meeting. Silvia Araujo, Universidad de Minho, and Mariana, Universidad de Minho, and I from Universidad Jaume I in Spain. I'm sorry, but I continue and explain in English, in French. We have the little translation of the slides in English. Et voilà. Alors, l'objectif, notre tâche, notre grande tâche dans le Intellectual Output 3, c'est la création, on est chargé de la création d'un guide méthodologique interactif et destiné aux enseignants qui pourraient accompagner l'enseignement et l'apprentissage multimodal des langues et aider aussi les enseignants à développer l'autonomie chez ces apprenants. Alors, tu passes, Annick, à la suivante. D'accord. Voilà. Alors, ce guide veut répondre et satisfaire les besoins, limites, difficultés, les contraintes que nous avons ressenties en tant qu'enseignants dans la situation vécue de la pandémie. Alors, et dans ce guide, on voudrait aussi reprendre tout le travail, tous les aspects qui ont été travaillés dans les Intellectual Outputs 1 et 2. Alors, et maintenant, on est en train de travailler sur ces, disons, sous-objectifs tâches. C'est le travail qu'on est en train de développer maintenant. Alors, tout d'abord, en premier lieu, ou tout d'abord, on est en train d'examiner l'état de l'art de la recherche sur les pratiques et activités informelles ou non formelles et leur application dans le cadre des enseignements d'apprentissage en ligne. Deuxièmement, on veut analyser à partir de cette étude, de cet recensement de données bibliographiques, des articles bibliographiques, à partir d'une analyse bibliométrique, on veut trouver on veut retenir ou analyser, voir quelles ont été les expériences en termes de succès et d'échecs en ce qui concerne ce qui a été l'enseignement des langues en ligne en milieu confiné. Voilà, troisième objectif, et c'est aussi la troisième tâche objectif, c'est d'identifier aussi de nouvelles pratiques pédagogiques pour travailler les différentes compétences à partir du cadre européen et surtout les pratiques synchrones d'interaction orale entre les étudiants enseignants, entre des étudiants des différents pays, voire aussi prendre en compte certaines pratiques de tandem linguistique à distance. Et en quatrième lieu, on veut identifier quelques idées majeures pour cette intégration réussie de la technologie numérique qui pourrait aider à promouvoir et à développer l'autonomie des étudiants. Et on continue un autre objectif tâche, numéro 5. Tu passes, Nick? Voilà. Alors, dans ce guide, on veut fournir des pistes de réflexion sur la manière de maximiser la contribution du numérique au développement des environnements d'apprentissage multimodaux. Et finalement, on voudrait que ce guide soit traduit dans toutes les langues différentes, les langues des différents pays du consortium. Voilà, ce sont des tâches objectifs qu'on est en train de développer en ce moment-là. On passe à la suivante, Annick. Voilà. Alors, à l'intérieur de notre guide, il y aura deux types de contenus. D'un côté, un contenu statique, d'un autre côté, un contenu dynamique. Le contenu statique, on va montrer tout à l'heure la structure de l'aspect du guide. Voilà, dans le contenu statique, c'est de l'information qui se maintiendra toujours dans les guides. Le contenu dynamique, ce sont des informations, des articles, des publications recensées d'une manière automatique à partir d'un algorithme que les collègues de Mignon sont en train de développer pour, disons, avoir une actualisation théorique de ce qui est en train de se produire à l'instant dans les domaines. Voilà. On passe à la suivante. Alors voilà, ça c'est l'aspect que en principe aurait notre guide, mais on va passer, si ça marche, il y a dans la diapo suivante, il y a une vidéo, si on peut la projeter. Voilà, c'est la même image, mais c'est plus dynamique. Je ne sais pas si ça marche pas.
Si, est-ce que vous voyez le...
Non, pas la vidéo.
Non,
Peut-être que j'arrête de partager.
Si ça ne marche pas, t'inquiète, parce qu'on pourrait...
Je peux repartager.
Okay, it's good.
Ok, voilà. Alors, tu continues, Sylvia?
Okay, in English or in French? En français? In English? Do you prefer in English?
In English, if you can.
Okay. Our guide will be multimodal, as it includes different types of content. A brief definition of a concept involved, a link to scientific papers related to this concept. Maybe it's interesting to stop the video now. To create this guide, we opted for a circular design that allows access to all the section of the guide without having the scroll down. Okay, maybe you can go on, please. In addition, the guide will be multimodal. When I say we have different types of contents and different layers, you can say that we have in the top the papers related to the section of the guide. After, you want to create a virtual community to encouraging the other colleagues, so the community, scientific community, to create content with us, namely, for example, podcasts. And the idea is to create a geographical map that will host podcasts and publication from these colleagues. And in the last layer, you can have one or several videos related to the concept of the guide. Okay. It's in addition, we have used machine learning techniques to fit certain section of the guide, more specifically the resource section. The idea is to have a guide that is updated automatically in the future with new publication linked to the different section of the guide. Okay, it's a dynamic, multimodal, and collaborative guide is the idea. We have three contents: is the guide, is the geographical map, is the podcast, and we want a close intersection connection between all these contents, and we have a very good community for dial project. Okay.
Okay. I need to go back. Yeah. So if you have finished, we can move on to IO4, which is so as you have seen, we start with a database, enlarged database, to help learners and teachers to sort things out, I would say, and to provide guidance. But we also want to perform something that would be performative at the end. How can we recognize these activities. And this is how we thought of using badges and micro-credentials. Shall I start with IO4 and Monica or Ben, you want to continue or you want to start straight away?
You can start.
Okay, so
please go.
I start. Is that what you said?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah, so the IO4 was divided into four main tasks. The first one being to determine the challenges of non-formal and informal learning. It started with a publication where we have invited contributions from different countries and different authors. It will be published in July or at the latest, I mean, in the summer. So it gives us a first information, I would say, first elements of information on the situation nowadays, the different types of situation of, and how do we articulate or not formal and informal language learning. The second task was to define what, and this is maybe the most, I don't know if it's the most difficult, but it's which skills can be defined as necessary and to be effective and efficient for language learning, and what types of activities can help develop these skills before we decide to attribute badges. So there are several studies for concerning English, but the idea was to, as you can see here, we are also focusing on less commonly taught languages. I mean, less depends on the country, but not English necessarily. So it could be, as you see, different languages. And here, a qualitative survey was carried out in Poland, and it will be extended to students learning another foreign language than English. Monica, I don't remember which countries have already, or which languages would be studied.
We decided it would be also French, but in other countries to make the survey more coherent.
Okay, but it could be in all the countries of, several countries of the consortium.
Three most countries of the consortium.
Yeah, the idea of the project, because also maybe today we are presenting our first results, it's work in progress, but it's also that we take into account a variety of contexts. This is very important in our project, not so that we have an intercultural and different context of study. Task 3 is when we are going to design badges. So I need to say that IO4 started not at the beginning of the project. We have a timeline. So we are at the beginning of IO4, but the idea is what are the skills that we can recognize as necessary or that could be validated. So a first list was to make a list of all the activities that could be recognized as useful for language learning. And you can see informal ones here. And maybe Monica, you want to explain I can move to the modelization that you made. But before that, so there are the activities, language learning activities, and metacognitive activities. We all know that holding a learning journal is, I would say, a basic step, but can we define other types of metacognitive activities that could lead to a badge, saying how can we predefine activities that could be validated? Or will we suggest learners to suggest activities that they have done? So it doesn't necessarily need to be predefined. So this is the question that we have at the moment. We could have a set list, but we could also offer learners to suggest activities that could lead to a badge. If we want them to be autonomous, this is something that could be offered to them. So the final task could be to issue the first badges. We know now that on Moodle we can have badges, but we have technical issues here. And the most conceptual issue is whether we want these badges to be motivational or institutional. And I think this is a key question. If we want our institutions to provide something in addition to the diploma and really recognize these activities that nowadays are rather invisible in the learning process of the language learner. Monica, maybe you would like to describe the multifunctional badge system.
Okay, then there is our project of multifunctional badges system, and we found that we could make them playing different functions at once, and they can be motivational ones, and they can be also recognized by the institution. And there is a very important third function, which is increasing learning consciousness. Every badges can be used at those three purposes according to needs according to local needs, but we think this institutional recognition is very important for our project, and we are just now working on it, how to manage to make them visible, as you said, Annick. And after that, there is another aspect of those badges, which are their features, and they can be different by the nature of the activities. We have just seen several of them, and you have just 3 of them on the in the design. And after that, we can also make the differences according to the difficulty of the task. And we have the example of watching a movie, and we can recognize different levels of difficulty. Watching with mother tongue subtitles would be the first step, watching with subtitles in original language, and finally watching without subtitles. I think it's all.
Yes, this is the first categorization that we have reached at the moment. So, of course, today we are presenting work in progress as we are just in the middle of the project. We hope to have, well, we are planning to have results in 1 year time. And in between, I think maybe today it could be interesting also to share how European project goes on. We have development, intellectual outputs, but we also have activities to facilitate collaboration. And we will have 2 meetings that will take place in the ongoing year that are called LTTA, Learning, Training and Teaching Activities. The idea is that at the moment we are developing prototypes, categories, typologies, and they will be tested in the events, ongoing events in December in Spain and later on in Romania or also in Lithuania. So this is where we are up to today. So as you can see, we have a lot of questions still. And although there are 4 IOs which are different one from another, it all belongs to a single project because, as you can see, there are interrelations within the project. And if we don't know what we can recognize, of course, we can't provide a badge at the end. If we don't equip the learners and the teachers with tools to facilitate the recognition or the reflection or the visualization of the processes at work, we can't move towards an institutional recognition. So we have to play at several levels. The idea being to provide a coherent database that would be open to the community, because this is expected from Europe, and this is quite fair. So here it is, and you've seen the different aspects. So maybe it would be good to have interaction now, as we are focusing in the project on interaction as well. If you have any questions, you can contact us later on. And we now have a brand new website where you can find all these different aspects. I don't know if you can see it here. And where you will see
the chat as well.
You see the
I have to
The
quit.
chat. Thank you, Charlotte.
In the chat, okay. But you can see the website, no?
No, it's the PowerPoint, Annick.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, sorry. I didn't get the message. I have to stop, partager. And it's here. Okay. So you have the activities, the consortium, the resources, and the resources are the results of the outputs, of the intellectual outputs. So thanks for being here, for sharing, and well, we are willing to answer your questions and maybe objections, and we are eager for this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annick, for this very interesting presentation. And of course, also, I also want to thank all your colleagues who are in the project with you and who explain the different aspects. Does anybody have any question? Maybe you can voice them in the chat or ask them directly. I have a question, but I don't want to monopolize the talk. So if nobody has questions for the moment, I would like to have a few to know a little more about the intellectual output 2, because you mentioned the development of a virtual reality environment, and I would like to know for which platform or for which tool this virtual reality environment is designed. Have you already decided whether it's going to be on PCs, that is to say the kind of virtual environment you had in Second Life, or is it going to be for virtual reality helmets, such as complete virtual reality?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, and then which ones have you chosen?
So thank you for this question. We had a discussion on that actually, because we were thinking of a virtual environment, as I briefly mentioned, and then we thought we thought of a screen, an on-screen environment. And then when we started to talk with interaction design students, they said, well, if you're dealing with a VR environment, which you have claimed here in the application, then that is what you have in a headset. So then we negotiated that part and decided on the goggles, the headset kind of virtual environment. But since we want to be very inclusive in this project, and we also, the students also said that the creation, the prototype that they are creating could also be used, since headsets for virtual reality could be expensive. You could also use some kind of helmet or something, and then put your smartphone in it. It would be a less advanced experience or environment, but experience as well. And I don't know if this answers your question, but there is also, to continue, it's also it was kind of difficult to create, it's time consuming to create a virtual environment. So when we talked about not only wanting the virtual reality environment to interact with an avatar, but also with multi-users environment, the students first said, well, we can't do that because we don't have the time. We just have these weeks or these months to finalize the project, our project in their course. And then we thought of how we're going to do it and prolonging the time, etc. And then they came up with the idea to use an existing virtual environment, which you could, which is open and free, and anyone can use it, and kind of just put different clothes on it, so to speak. So, which is the Pictionary environment that I was talking about, which originally was just a scene with someone doing Pictionary, and now it's in the woods. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much, because actually there's a problem with, well, not a problem, but at the University of Lorraine, where I work, we were very much interested by virtual reality 4 years ago or something like that, and we wanted to build an area in our Self-Access Language Center where students could use virtual reality and could perhaps interact with other students from other universities where they would have the equipment and so on and so on. And so we tried to analyze the different kinds of equipment that existed on the market, and we chose one particular which seemed to be the most used at the time. And nowadays we find that we have problems because not all programs are compatible with it. And so I don't know, but I think that the problem with virtual reality at the moment is that we are more or less at the beginning, just like when we started with what's it called, VCR and that kind of equipment. I don't know if you remember, but I'm quite old, so I remember very well when in universities we had all different types of equipments for VCRs, and we had to have these different kinds of equipment in order to be able to read the tapes and so on and so on. And I have the impression that virtual reality for the moment is something like that, and it's complicated to create new environments that could be compatible for all the different kind of equipment that you can buy on the market, including the ones where you can use your own smartphone. So that's why I was asking the question, in fact.
Yeah, that might be the case. We're aware of that as well, of course. Yes.
Yeah, I have shared your article and to the group, because we're fully aware that the experience that you have had is not, well, as you were telling me, not as satisfactory as maybe expected. Mm-hmm. We are aware of that. At least the original idea, in fact, we had planned to have a place where we could have interaction, as we were saying, tandem interaction, or even teacher interaction, at least using avatars, so that maybe it gives this extra dimension that, well, gamification, as we were saying, maybe helping developing interaction. But we are aware that there are limits, and this is what we are testing as well. This is why the testing sessions in the next LTTA will be very useful, so that we have the reaction, and maybe we will, well, at least we will have tested and maybe we can share our experiences with you, because I think we need to test anyway.
Just if I may add something to this, to complement what Anne is saying, we have a seminar next week in CercleS, and one of the speakers or the participants in the seminar is from a company. I've put the link in the chat. Wixar is a friend of mine, and they develop VR solutions. But they're there as being, you know, what might happen one day in the future in higher education. It's not. You know, it's the reality on the ground is completely different and much more modest. And on a more modest note, I put a link to how to make cardboard VR goggles for Google. Okay, there's also the budgetary aspect, because if you look at the pricing, then it's ridiculous compared to the numbers of students that we have at least in higher education in France. So that's my modest contribution.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
I would have a question to those who are not in the consortium. Have you, already experienced badges, I mean, such as recognizing work in progress, or because of course there are badges in, and Ben, I don't know if he's here anymore, but testing apps where we have badges, but which are motivational ones or kind of gamified ones. But what we would like to go on with is with institutional badges, in addition to the diploma. So I was wondering whether you have some previous experience of that, or I see you have raised your hand.
I don't know if Mercedes has raised her hand for this question, but is a badge not just a modern form of a certificate of some sort of?
Yeah, what is important is the content, maybe rather than the format.
What we used to call us, yeah.
It gives us an excuse to try and formalize maybe the content, because in the portfolios we have this feedback experience, but it's not externalized. What I was interested in was to make it visible to people who are not maybe aware that this is going on.
But do you think that calling it a badge is compatible with such an environment where somebody's paying thousands of euros to be a student? Maybe they want more than a badge.
Yeah, so maybe we should call it a certificate then.
That's the thing. It's the principle of the badge is the motivation aspect of it. It's the but the idea. I'm just worried that you get badges on Duolingo and you don't pay anything for that, and they give you lots of badges. They have the same value as the badges you are talking about. And are universities, are the stakeholders going to take us seriously if we give students badges for languages?
Yeah, maybe we should call it micro credentials then, rather than badges.
Yeah, as soon as you talk about Bitcoins, they're going to be going.
Look more serious, but the aim would be the same. It means, how do we recognize that maybe one learner has done more activities, external activities, than another one?
Language portfolios.
Yeah. But how do we make it accessible, easily accessible to everyone?
Yeah.
Or maybe blockchain token. Everybody likes the word blockchain. Maybe blockchain token or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We use sexy terms, haven't we? That's it. Mercedes raised your hand.
Yeah. Yes. I just I would like to say just that we have forgotten to mention that the categories in the video shown are not the are all. We are working in new categories. We have forgotten to mention that. Just that.
Thank you. Anyway, now we have the address of the site, so we'll be able to visit the site and to see the progress over the next few months, I suppose.
Yeah, I need to insist on the fact that, well, we're just in the middle. We are showing work in progress because it's a way for us also to have feedback from, and I think your first questions are really interesting, because these are some questions that we have, but sometimes we try to go ahead. Maybe we don't, I mean, as you were saying, a badge, we need to be careful when we are talking about badges, because we want it. I mean, the idea, the origin is to make something visible at institutional level, but we are aware that there are two levels. So it's for us, it's interesting to have your feedback. So, but of course, this is not the final product that you are presenting today, as you are fully aware.
Are there any more questions?
Would you be willing to share your slides, Annick?
I think if the consortium agrees, we can.
So,
I can send you the PDF.
And if anybody would like me to send the slides on to you, you can put your email address in the chat. That way it'll make it easier for me if you put write your email address in the chat, and I will forward what Annick sends to us, and the video perhaps.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Okay. Okay, anyway, thank you for giving us the opportunity to share, and to maybe we have other meetings where we can meet. I mean, I don't know, in CercleS conferences, HANACLES next conference, etc., to continue exploring.
Are you going? Sorry, are you going to be at the CercleS conference, Annick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Both at the EAIE, which is the international, what does that EAIE mean? I forgot now, but it's which takes place in Barcelona, where we will have World Coffee, where we will present our project and make people experiment interaction, and then CercleS, yes. So we have other opportunities to meet, hopefully.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for this very interesting talk. And of course, the people who could not follow the talk will be able to have the recording, which would be made available probably in the next few weeks, very soon, probably. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Everyone, bye.